Excerpts from The Madman by Kahlil Gibran. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. War. One night a feast was held in the palace, and there came a man and prostrated himself before the prince, and all the feasters looked upon him, and they saw that one of his eyes was out, and that the empty socket bled. And the prince inquired of him, "What has befallen you?" And the man replied, "O prince, I am by profession a thief, and this night, because there was no moon, I went to rob the money changer's shop, and as I climbed in through the window, I made a mistake and entered the weaver's shop, and in the dark I ran into the weaver's loom, and my eye was plucked out. And now, O prince, I ask for justice upon the weaver." Then the prince sent for the weaver, and he came, and it was decreed that one of his eyes should be plucked out. "O prince," said the weaver, "the decree is just. It is right that one of my eyes be taken. And yet, alas! Both are necessary to me in order that I may see the two sides of the cloth that I weave. But I have a neighbor, a cobbler, who also has two eyes, and in his trade both eyes are not necessary." Then the prince sent for the cobbler, and he came, and they took out one of the cobbler's two eyes, and justice was satisfied. End of War. The New Pleasure. Last night I invented a new pleasure, and as I was giving it the first trial, an angel and a devil came rushing toward my house. They met at my door and fought with each other over my newly created pleasure, the one crying, "It is a sin," and the other, "It is a virtue." End of The New Pleasure. The Gravedigger. Once as I was burying one of my dead selves, the gravedigger came by and said to me, "Of all those who come here to bury, you alone I like." Said I, "You please me exceedingly, but why do you like me?" "Because," said he, "they come weeping and go weeping. You only come laughing and go laughing." End of The Gravedigger. On the Steps of the Temple. Yestereve, on the marble steps of the temple, I saw a woman sitting between two men. One side of her face was pale, the other was blushing. End of On the Steps of the Temple. The Blessed City. In my youth I was told that in a certain city everyone lived according to the Scriptures. And I said, "I will seek that city and the blessedness thereof." And it was far, and I made great provision for my journey. And after 40 days I beheld the city, and on the 41st day I entered into it. And lo, the whole company of the inhabitants had each but a single eye and but one hand. And I was astonished, and said to myself, "Shall they of this so holy city have but one eye and one hand?" Then I saw that they too were astonished, for they were marveling greatly at my two hands and my two eyes. And as they were speaking together, I inquired of them, saying, "Is this indeed the blessed city, where each man lives according to the Scriptures?" And they said, "Yes, this is that city." "And what," said I, "hath befallen you? And where are your right eyes and your right hands?" And all the people were moved, and they said, "Come thou, and see." And they took me to the temple in the midst of their city. And in that temple I saw the heaps of hands and eyes, all withered. And then said I, "Alas, what conqueror hath committed this cruelty upon you?" And there went a murmur amongst them. And one of their elders stood forth and said, "This doing is of ourselves. God hath made us conquerors over the evil that was in us." And he led me to a high altar, and all the people followed. And he showed me above the altar an inscription graven, and I read, "If thy right eye offend thee, pluck it out and cast it away from thee. For it is profitable for thee that one of thy members should perish, and not that the whole body should be cast into hell. And if thy right hand offend thee, cut it off and cast it from thee. For it is profitable for thee that one of thy members should perish, and not that thy whole body should be cast into hell." Then I understood, and I turned about to all the people and cried, "Hath no man or woman among you have two eyes or two hands?" And they answered me, saying, "No, not one. There is none whole save such as are yet too young to read the Scripture and to understand its commandment." And when we had come out of the temple, I straightway left that blessed city, for I was not too young, and I could read the Scripture. End of The Blessed City. Defeat. Defeat, my solitude and my aloofness. You are dearer to me than 1,000 triumphs, and sweeter to my heart than all world glory. Defeat, my self-knowledge and my defiance. Through you I know that I am yet young and swift of foot, and not to be trapped by withering laurels. And in you I have found aloneness, and the joy of being shunned and scorned. Defeat, my shining sword and shield. In your eyes I have read that to be enthroned is to be enslaved, and to be understood is to be leveled down, and to be grasped is but to reach one's fullness, and like a ripe fruit to fall and be consumed. Defeat, my bold companion, you shall hear my songs and my cries and my silences, and none but you shall speak to me of the beating of wings, and of urging of seas, and of mountains that burn in the night, and you alone shall climb my steep and rocky soul. Defeat, my deathless courage, you and I shall laugh together with the storm, and together we shall dig graves for all that die in us, and we shall stand in the sun with a will, and we shall be dangerous. End of Defeat. The Astronomer. In the shadow of the temple, my friend and I saw a blind man sitting alone, and my friend said, "Behold, the wisest man of our land." Then I left my friend and approached the blind man and greeted him, and we conversed. After a while I said, "Forgive my question, but since when hast thou been blind?" "From my birth," he answered. Said I, "And what path of wisdom followest thou?" Said he, "I am an astronomer." Then he placed his hand upon his breast and said, "I watch all these suns and moons and stars." End of The Astronomer. Said a blade of grass. Said a blade of grass to an autumn leaf, "You make such a noise falling. You scatter all my winter dreams." Said the leaf indignant, "Low born and low dwelling, songless peevish thing, you live not in the upper air, and you cannot tell the sound of singing." Then the autumn leaf lay upon the earth and slept, and when spring came, she waked again, and she was a blade of grass. And when it was autumn and her winter sleep was upon her, and above her through all the air the leaves were falling, she muttered to herself, "Oh, these autumn leaves, they make such noise, they scatter all my winter dreams." End of Said a Blade of Grass. The Eye. Said the Eye one day, "I see beyond these valleys a mountain veiled with blue mist. Is it not beautiful?" The Ear listened, and after listening intently a while said, "But where is any mountain? I do not hear it." Then the Hand spoke and said, "I am trying in vain to feel it or touch it, and I can find no mountain." And the Nose said, "There is no mountain, I cannot smell it." Then the Eye turned the other way, and they all began to talk together about the Eye's strange delusion, and they said, "Something must be the matter with the Eye." End of The Eye. Two Learned Men. Once there lived in the ancient city of Afkar 2 learned men who hated and belittled each other's learning, for one of them denied the existence of gods, and the other was a believer. One day the 2 men met in the marketplace, and amidst their followers they began to dispute and to argue about the existence or non-existence of the gods. And after hours of contention they parted. That evening the unbeliever went to the temple and prostrated himself before the altar, and prayed to the gods to forgive his wayward past. And that same hour the other learned man, he who had upheld the gods, burned his sacred books, for he had become an unbeliever. End of 2 Learned Men. End of Excerpts from the Madman by Kahlil Gibran.